What does it mean to lead with generosity? It's about giving more or giving differently. How do the best leaders build careers that reflect their values, not just their job titles? I'm Joanie Bily, CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide, and I'm here today to host our podcast, More Than the Dress. Today, I'm going to be sitting down with two powerhouse leaders. We have Joyce Russell, the president of the Adecco Group Foundation and author of Cherry on Top. And then we also have the amazing Rachelle Chapman, director of the Adecco Group US Foundation. But before I get to Rachelle and Joyce, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself because this is my first podcast here, More Than the Dress, which is such a great podcast, such a great name, and a great opportunity really for us to share the great work that's happening at Dress for Success as we think about advancing women in the world of work. But I also thought since I'm new as the new CEO, I would take a minute to just share a little bit about myself personally, and then we'll get to Joyce and Rachelle. So I have spent my career, 30 years in the employment and staffing industry, very much focused on workforce development. And I've been passionate about helping people advance both their careers and their personal lives so that they are living their best life and with purpose. I also am a native New Yorker, so proud to be here today. I was born and raised in New York, so feel very at home here. Grew up the oldest daughter of four girls with two amazing, hardworking parents. My mother was a nurse. My father was an electrician. And I love that our office here in New York City overlooks the Empire State Building because when I was a little girl, I know that my father climbed up the top of that antenna and changed the light bulb. And I thought my dad was a Superman to be able to do that. So he was my superhero. But really, both of my parents were superheroes, and they still are to me today. So coming from a family of all four girls, I thought I would share with you that my parents really instilled three basic things in us. And I think it relates so much to the Dress for Success mission. Not only did we know that they loved us unconditionally, but they also taught us the importance of a work ethic and participating, certainly contributing through hard work, through education, through efforts to make a difference in the communities that we serve. The other thing they taught us, just like I thought my dad had superpowers, they taught me and my sisters that we could do anything we set our minds to if we worked hard at it and were dedicated to achieving what we wanted to do. They gave us an incredible amount of confidence, and I think that that is what Dress for Success does so well. So with that, I want to turn to Joyce and Rachelle and maybe kick off our podcast today. First of all, welcome, ladies. We are so thrilled to have you here at Worldwide Headquarters. We thank you so much for your incredible partnership and support. I'm excited to talk today and to hear from you about all the great things that are happening at Adecco Group Foundation, and your support of the Dress for Success organization. But let's start out with a question about superpowers, because I believe we all have superpowers within us. And I'd like to know from you, what's your superpower? And maybe how did you find it, or how do you share it with others? Joyce, I'll start with you.
Okay. So Joanie, I think one of my superpowers and what I get asked the most about is my energy level. And I honestly say that it's God-given. I don't run out of energy, especially for like the work that we do with Dress for Success. It ignites me. And then the other superpower, and it's one of the reasons why you're sitting here, is my connections, right? I've been in the connection business my whole life, which is the matchmaking business, finding great employers and great people and putting together. And I love that, connecting individuals. I always say your network is your net worth, right?
Love that. Yes.
And, one of the things women are not so good about in doing that is they might have a network, but they don't leverage that network. They don't make that connection or reach out. And there's a really fun story about that with Magic Johnson in my book that we'll maybe have time to chat with later. But those would be my two superpowers: is energy level and connections.
Yes. And I think I've known you, Joyce, for almost 20 years. And I can say I used to call you the Energizer Bunny.
Yes.
So that is definitely your superpower. Yes. I absolutely believe that. And you're right. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our relationship and our connection. So just a thank you, because I'm so honored to be here. And you knew that this was going to be a good match.
Yes. And we're so lucky to have you, Joanie, at the helm.
Well, thank you. All right, Rachelle, your superpower. Let's hear it.
So the first one I would say actually is a kind of a repeat of what Joyce just said, although said a little differently. I've always been good at building relationships, and in a very, I think, earnest and authentic way. Biographies are my favorite books. And so I think that tells you a little. I love people and really kind of understanding the whole person, what makes you tick. Like, I'm not real good at the small talk. Like, I want to know, like, tell me your soul, like I want to know like the deep stuff, which I think it kind of lends itself well into kind of a second superpower, which is encouraging others. And I think I naturally see the best in others and have a tendency of identifying people's natural strengths and taking it a step further, making sure that they know it. I believe real strongly in telling people how you feel about them. Joyce can probably attest to that because I'm always gushing about her to her and you. And then, not to overcomplicate it, but a third is I'm a very grateful person. And I've been that way my whole life. I get that a lot from my dad. Talked about parents and their superpowers. My dad did a great job of demonstrating that and living his life, not only encouraging others, but also being very grateful. So I'm so grateful to be here with you and with you, Joyce, especially as I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary.
So let's take a second to talk about that, right? So happy 20-year anniversary with Adecco, Rachelle.
I know, it's crazy.
Right, it's gone so fast, I'm sure, for you.
Blink of an eye. Yeah. If you had told me 20 years ago, Rachelle, you're going to be sitting in New York City doing a podcast with Joanie and with Joyce, I would have said you're crazy.
And here we are.
Here we are.
So congratulations on 20 years with Adecco.
Thank you.
And we have that in common from the sense of I spent quite a few years at Adecco, and that's how I got to meet Joyce. So love Adecco Group. Well, I love the whole concept around the superpowers. And I think that that's one thing that Dress for Success really ignites within the women that come into our offices throughout the world. And it's sometimes, that superpower is within the woman, but it does take sometimes our employees, our affiliates, our volunteers, where they see that potential, Rachelle, just like you're saying, you can see something in someone and they help ignite it because it's already there. It's within them. But I think the Dress for Success organization and our purpose and our mission of what we do really helps ignite that and helps, propel women forward.
And we help those women find that.
Yes.
Like, what's one thing that you do better than anyone else?
Yes.
And they have to think through that. Like, what is that one thing? Everybody has at least one thing.
Right. And it instills confidence. And even the whole suiting, it's not really just about the clothing, but it's making them feel, right, so confident and good and helping them with the career readiness, which Adecco does such a great job of. So it all ties together. So thank you for sharing those. I agree, both some great superpowers. So Joyce, as I've mentioned, we've known each other a long time. You and I have worked together in the corporate world. And a few years ago, you made the transition, of running multi-billion-dollar business and decided to take on running the foundation. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about why you made the transition and what it's meant to you If you could share with our audience, I think they'd love to hear that.
Sure. So we have foundations all over the world, Joanie, but we did not have one in the U.S. They were in Spain, they were in Italy, they were in France, they were in Switzerland. But our CEO came to me and said, we've sold a company. We want to take part of those profits and put it in a foundation in the U.S. And would you have an interest in running it? And I told him, no. And he was like, and then he said, what did you say? And I really had never thought about that, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes in your life, you're doing something, you're in it, and you just have no idea that there's this amazing opportunity. So I go home, and my husband, David,
Yeah.
and I tell him that I said no. And he said, well, why did you say no so quickly? And I said, because I've never run a foundation. And I have this thing and this saying, and Rachelle knows it so well, anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? So if I was going to run the foundation, I wanted it to be one of the best foundations in the Adecco Group.
Of course you did. Because I know you.
Yes.
That would be you. Yes, absolutely.
So first of all, I had to think about that. Like, what kind of impact would we really make? So the CEO was generous, and you used the word generosity. He said, you know better what the foundation in the U.S. would need to do than would think it should do sitting in Switzerland. So I said, well, I think what it should do is help upskill and reskill American workers, because we know work is not equitable for everyone. And that would be the first pillar. The middle pillar would be about equality for all, and so we want to focus on that. And the third was giving back in our local communities, because we have branches and offices all across the U.S. And Dress for Success was a trifecta. It hit all of them.
Checks all the boxes.
And reskilling those women after they get that dress and those clothes. Let's upskill and reskill them and get them back in the world of work. It was the middle pillar, equality for all. And so that just fit. And then giving back in our local communities. You have affiliates all across the country that are helping so many women. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I see the work you're doing with 900 women a year, transitioning them back into the world of work and making such a difference. So it was just so perfect. But I also had to get my head around it, right, of making that switch. But Joanie, I get to really make a difference now, right? I get to really put my handprint so that when I leave my career one day, that I finish here, right? And I do that by really making an impact.
It's amazing the work you've done. And I've been able to watch it from afar a little bit for a few years. And now just seeing what you're also doing with Dress for Success is incredible. Rachelle, can you share a little bit more about the Adecco Group Foundation and the work that you are doing with Dress for Success? And feel free to share others as well.
Sure. So I was lucky enough to take over leading our Dress for Success partnership a few years ago. And I kind of walked into it as affiliates, we're still really coming out of COVID. So during COVID, a lot of the affiliates switched to an all virtual kind of offering. They were serving clients virtually. We were participating virtually. And so I had the good fortune of taking the partnership over at a time where your affiliates and our colleagues were so hungry and eager to get back out into the community and just leave their house. For a while, it was really hard to get people to want to leave their house to go to a fundraiser or to volunteer. And then it's sort of over the last couple of years, we've tripled the amount of colleagues that have engaged with Dress for Success in one capacity or another. A lot of that is around volunteerism. We had well over 1,000 hours that we volunteered with Dress for Success around the country. We sponsor individual affiliates where we work and where we live. And then we also sponsor worldwide. So it's kind of a little bit of a two-prong approach. Our colleagues love it. They absolutely love it. And it takes one time. You interact with a woman, you give back in some way, and whether it's sorting clothes or working on a donation day like we do, or helping a woman prepare for the world of work, or we've had a really good fortune recently this year helping a lot of women actually find a job maybe that they haven't had in 4 years or 10 years or 4 months. We're actually leveraging our network around the country to help put women back into the seat to ultimately help fulfill your mission, which is achieve financial independence. So We're so proud to be part of the mission.
Well, you really are, like, when you think of even, and you mentioned the mission, but also the vision, right, is for Dress for Success is to empower women to thrive in both work and in life. And it is so impactful when you go to the affiliates and spend time with them and see the women coming in and the difference it's making.
Yes.
I was in the Palm Beaches affiliate a couple of weeks ago, and they did an incredible event where they had teachers, over 250 teachers in Palm Beach County came in for a day, and they did it over 5 days, and they got the suiting experience. They got career advice. We even had like school supplies donated. So they were walking out with things to help them fill their classroom, because then they're taking that back and teaching our children, right, in the communities. Yeah. And so you see the different work that's happening all throughout the Dress for Success network worldwide. And it's really making a difference.
Yeah, Joanie, we just had an amazing session in Toronto. Maybe you want to share a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so one of the really cool things that we've done this year with your affiliate in Toronto is we've actually, these are my words, but we've adopted the boutique like one day a month. So we come in and essentially we're there doing office hours in the morning and in the afternoon, and clients come in and we prepare them in every way possible for looking for a job. And I think us being there consistently has allowed us to build trust with the clients, certainly build trust with the affiliates, where we become like this trusted friend or advisor, to them. And just in one day, we got a job opportunity to staff a conference, and we needed a lot of people to do it. Dress for Success worked so quickly. They mobilized all the women in their affiliate. We had 124 women apply for this opportunity within a very short window. 15 were hired within 24 hours. And some of those women had been out of the workforce for several years and just said, I just needed the chance. Somebody took a chance on me and said yes. And I know now for sure more than ever, I need to be back in 2 feet, working and kind of doing my thing. The other thing I just wanted to say is about what you said before. I think that so many of our volunteers, our colleagues, go into these experiences with the affiliates thinking, I'm gonna fill somebody's brain up with, information. And what they find is that their hearts are filled so much that they are getting so much more than they're giving.
Yes.
They go into it thinking, I'm going to give for the day. And then they walk out and go, man, I'm an amazing human being.
Right? You feel like, oh my gosh, I took more than I gave because it's such a great experience.
Yeah. And I think that so many companies and so many people are looking for those opportunities. And thank goodness we have Dress for Success to say, we need you. Come help us.
We need your help. And there's so many ways to partner and give. But that comes back to generosity, which is a perfect segue to your book, Joyce, Cherry on Top. I'm going to share a story that I remember about 17 years ago. Was at a luncheon on Long Island, and you were the guest speaker. And at the luncheon, the name of the speech that you gave was Cherry on Top.
It was.
And we talked after that, and I said, that's your book, right? And you said, yes, one day I'm going to write a book. And you did.
Yes.
And so talk to us a little bit about Cherry on Top and what it means and why you wrote it.
So, Joanie, there are a lot of people that I was gonna. Yes. And so about when I took the foundation role, my assistant, Sarah, who wrote the book with me, said, you were gonna, but, you need to do a. So you need to make this thing happen.
Make it happen.
So the gift of time came when I got in the foundation role to have a little bit of a minute to write the book, Cherry on Top, Generosity in Life and Leadership. And what Cherry on Top is nailing the core, then doing a little bit more, right? It's that generosity, that kindness that you can think about in every single interaction. And so when I was a little girl, we talked about our moms and our dads, and I had a great mom and dad too. And my dad was a farmer. So in the summer, it's too hot to farm in Florida. So my dad would pack his 3 little girls up with my mom in our Chrysler, and we would travel across America because he wanted the little girls to see all of the beautiful states in this country. So we would be staying at Holiday Inns across America, but every 3rd or 4th night, it would be like a cherry on top. We'd stay somewhere a little bit nicer, go to dinner a little bit nicer. And as a 5-year-old, you're thinking, I like this night. Right?
I love more of this, right? Than the Holiday Inn.
So I began to think about it very simply like, well, that was a cherry on top, right? So then I get into business and I'm working and everything. And I began to see a difference in service around Cherry on Top. And I tell a story in the book about the Umstead Hotel in Raleigh, North Carolina. So my youngest child, Coleman, was a very good lacrosse player. And you all know when you travel sports and, you're leaving work, you haven't had lunch, you're traveling 2 or 3 hours to get to a game. And so I pulled in this hotel and I was starving. And so I asked the front desk person, did they have an apple or something? And, a lot of hotels have that, basket of fruit or something. And so she said, no, I'm sorry, we don't. And I didn't think another word of it. I ran upstairs to quickly change my clothes. And I'm coming back through the lobby of that hotel. And I hear this, Joyce Russell. And I'm thinking, I don't know anyone in Cary, North Carolina. And I turned around to see a gentleman in a tuxedo with a silver tray over his head. And he had a red apple and a green apple. He said, we didn't know what color you might prefer, Miss Russell. Well, let me tell you, that took service to a whole nother level. That was cherry on top. That was above and beyond. So I took that concept back to Adecco and said, we're going to take our middle pillar, quality of the person, service that we provide, value, and we're going to take service to a whole nother level. So I wrote the book to leave a legacy, right? I'm planting trees of whose shade I will not sit under, right? I used to be able to talk to thousands of people being the president of Adecco, but in the foundation, I've got a smaller scope. So I said, I got to put it all here to help others that maybe haven't seen the movie that we've seen, right? And maybe let them know what some of those lessons are. So I tried to write a book to leave a legacy and give all those lessons in one spot.
Yeah. And since we're doing video, I just want to show not only the podcast here, but I love this book and was able to read it when you first published it right during COVID.
Yes.
And love that you talk, I'm even mentioned. So I'm even more honored when you talk about the accountability and the lifeline. But Joyce, you live this every single day. And I wish we had more time because I could give so many examples of how you've done that throughout with customers, with talent, with employees. So you're amazing.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, the proceeds for Cherry on Top go to Dress for Success in the American Staffing Association Scholarship Fund. So we pay it forward with the book too.
It's incredible. Well, thank you for sharing that.
You.
And Rachelle, I know you want to chime in a little bit on generosity and Joyce.
I was just going to say, I was just remember, I could also give so many examples, but this was several years ago. And I said to Joyce, she said, what are you doing tonight for your son's birthday? And I said, well, he loves sushi, so I'm going to bring in sushi. And she's like, that's it? I'm like, well, I don't know. I think that's pretty good. And she's like, no. You need to go get the kimono. You need to get the decorations. Go get the paper lantern. She turned what would have been a very boring sushi dinner into a Japanese restaurant in my home.
And created an amazing experience
that he still talks about to
that
this.
He will never forget.
Yes.
And you've done that with me too, Joyce, and my kids and my children.
Yeah.
So the nugget there, everyone, is the power of experiences. When we looked at retention at Adecco, it's not just your boss, which is really important. It's not your compensation, your opportunities, but what kind of experiences are you having? They bond you to that company, to that person, et cetera. So the power of experiences is really important.
And I want to tag on to that and bring it back to Dress for Success. The power of the experience of volunteering with Dress for Success. We talk about that kind of under the umbrella of generosity. One of the coolest things I've seen running our partnership is for our colleagues to get the opportunity to connect with each other. I can't tell you how many times I have introduced colleagues who live in the same exact city. In Cincinnati, we have 20 colleagues across all of our business units going, wait a second, I didn't know you lived here. Wait, I have somebody from that business unit in my market. It has been such an amazing opportunity to bring people together. The reason I bring that up is if you follow any of the research on longevity, you know that we're not living longer lives because we're eating right and exercising, although you're both doing that very wonderfully.
You too.
It's even
Community.
more about social connection.
Yeah,
who do you know?
It's about your relationships,
it's
right?
It's about relationships. So being generous with your time, giving back to an organization like Dress for Success, I have seen well-being go up in our colleague population. I know that because more colleagues come to me saying, can we have a partnership in my city? Can we have a partnership which is why we keep expanding our reach every year. Our colleagues want it.
Right.
They
It's
want to give back.
fulfilling,
It's
right?
so
It's so
fulfilling.
fulfilling. It's making that impact.
Yes.
And
Joni,
it's making a difference in their lives.
Joni, it's helping our business. Adecco is a big company with a lot of brands, and we talk about working in the ecosystem. But because they sorted at a Dress for Success event next to somebody else in a different business line, they developed trust to say, hey, I have this client. I think we could work together. And you just won't believe what it's doing around our colleague population, around trust and relationships and working in our own company.
Yeah.
Also, I'll say this too. I think for me personally, but I've also talked to other colleagues that have done the same thing. We talk about generosity and setting that example. Joyce is the best example setter there at work, but seeing how it's trickled down in my home and into my colleagues' homes. I bring my daughter with me on donation day. She is unloading cars and sorting through donations at Dress for Success in Denver right alongside me. She came to a signature event a couple years ago and saw me accept an award on stage and give a speech. And then she goes home and talks about it. Now she volunteers twice a month at our church nursery. And then my son caught the bug too. So that living a generous life at work and at home, that's a legacy I want to leave. It's certainly a legacy you're leading.
Right. And especially to your children, right? But what an example you're setting with the work that's also fulfilling you. And here, how wonderful to see that it's having that impact on your children. I love it. Which kind of leads me to our next topic, which is looking at what leadership looks like today. And I'd love to hear, because both of you balance so much. You know, you're traveling all over the country, maybe sometimes around the world. You are, you both have families, both have exciting things going on in your life with families. But talk to me a little bit about what leadership looks like and how you balance that with your values.
So let's think about leadership right now, Joanie. I think we hear a lot about leaders have to have a lot more empathy now. They have to have a lot more transparency right now. They have to have a lot more resilience. I always say to these young mothers that have worked for me, don't make it so easy, because life isn't so easy. Joanie, you know I use a concept from Susie Welch that really changed my life. And it's, how will this affect me in 10 minutes? How will this affect me in 10 months? And how will this affect me in 10 years? We grew a company from 300 million to 26 billion. So I have to tell you, sometimes it was more family, sometimes it was more Adecco. And there were trade-offs there. I always tell people there are trade-offs, you know, when you're in a big role traveling and thousands of branches, et cetera.
Absolutely. Yes.
So Coleman was a senior in high school. He was a very good lacrosse player. He's one of the best players in the state of North Carolina. And he said to David and I've worked as hard at my sport as you all have worked in your two careers. I'd like you both to be at my 7 home games at Providence Day School. We were always at the game, but it might have been David, it might have been me, but very rarely were we both there, just because we had careers and travel and everything else. So I said to Sarah and Ansley, I got to be at these 7 home games. So what that means in Charlotte, if the game's at 4:30 on a Thursday, you've got to land on American by 2:30, to get, to the game at 4:30. I'm doing so great. I'm like winning super mom,
At every game.
I'm making those games.
Yep.
Well, as life would have it, a tsunami. Oh, yes, a tsunami happens in Asia, right? I would have never thought a tsunami would happen in Asia. And we had a very large client in Marysville, Ohio, where we had 3,600 workers on that line. Now, the parts cannot come from Japan for that plant to work. So that president is flying from Japan to Marysville, Ohio on one of those Thursdays that I promised Coleman I would be at the game. So I 10-10-10'd it. In 10 minutes, when I would have told Coleman that I couldn't be at the game, I needed to choose Adecco, he would have said something like, "That's okay, Mom. You always chose Adecco."
Right.
Oof.
Right.
Painful,
Doesn't
right?
sit well, right? When you think about that. Right.
10 months, he was the type of child, he was so good at lacrosse, he took chances. So he might take a chance driving a car fast. He might take a chance on a beverage he shouldn't drink, right? 17-year-old, you all know what I'm talking about. And he said, well, you didn't do what you said you're going to do, so I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And then I felt like right now, Coleman's engaged right now, and I'd be standing at a rehearsal dinner and they'd be looking across the room and they'd be looking and saying, we're going to choose when you see these grandchildren, we're going to choose. So in 10 minutes, Joanie, I was brave enough, personal courage, women, you've got to have it, to tell the client that I could not be there. I was sending another amazing woman to be empowered to make the decisions on behalf of our company. In 10 months, based on the decision that she made, not I made, we won Global Supplier of the Year. And today, 10 years later, we're still a very big customer of Adecco, and I have the most amazing relationship with Coleman. So I'm just telling everyone in the audience, 10, 10, 10, and make those choices in those really important moments of where you need to be.
A lot of women really struggle with the balance, right, of being a working mom. I know I did. Joyce, I was lucky to have you as a great mentor and to share things like that with me. But it is important it's not always a balance, but it's making those right decisions of where you need to show up. And Rachelle, I know you've shared, you've had to make some of those decisions, and lucky enough, you work with Joyce on that. But talk to us a little bit about what leadership kind of means to you and how you demonstrate that, and, also talking a little bit about how you balance it with your personal life.
Well, first of all, let me just say it is wonderful having a boss that believes in 10, 10, 10 and lives it, because I had to 10, 10, 10 her about a month ago when she asked me to
speak. Right back to her.
Yeah. She asked me to speak at a conference that was on my daughter's birthday, and I tried every which way. It just was not going to be possible for me to be either home for breakfast or home for dinner. And she's a freshman. She's going to be 15. I only have 4 birthdays left with her at the house. We start thinking like that. You go, I don't want to miss that day, and luckily she was very understanding and said, don't worry, we'll put somebody else in. So I just wanted to say you really do live that and breathe that. From a leadership standpoint, I think I try to live by this, is just to take care of your people. As a boss, Joyce has done that very well. And in fact, every leader I've ever had at the Adecco Group over the last 20 years has really lived that philosophy. I have felt cared for. And so I try to extend that to others that as a leader as well. And also the other thing that's really important to me, and luckily for me, this comes naturally, but the importance of curiosity. The world is never going to be as slow as it is today. We're just getting faster. Things are changing constantly. And so really leaning in a spirit of just wanting to know more and understand and ask questions, and coming from a place with zero obligation to necessarily agree, but just to understand, with another person or learn a new skill, I think is so important as a leader.
I've always heard the saying, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So that listening piece is something that we should be doing more of. Well, I have one more question that I want to ask you both, and really think about kind of closing out our advice to our listeners, and would like to ask you both that if you think about yourself 20 years from now, I want to know, looking back on what you will do, like maybe from now to the next 20 years, what will you say? I am so glad I did that. Or maybe even now, looking back 20 years, saying, I'm so glad I did that, because I'm a big believer that you want to live your life and not have regrets. But we also want to share with our listeners advice on making sure that they are leaning in. I wrote a book called Dive In Deep, which is all talking about diving into your best life and not holding yourself back, embracing your fears, right, and going for it. So please share with what you would do. Rachelle, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
So I was reflecting on this question. My first thought actually went personally. And one of the things I'm personally going to be so glad, I'm glad now, and I'm going to really be glad in 10 or 20 years, is that I lived overseas and that I had that experience for myself and for my children, to learn another language, to travel, to, learn about different cultures. So I love that we did that as a family. Professionally, this might be unpopular with some people, but for me, it was the power of yes. And I say yes to more things. Boundaries are important, and
Yep.
everybody around the corner is telling you to stand in your power, say no. I'm here to tell you to say yes. Say yes more often. When Joyce actually asked me in 2010 to take over our sponsorship of the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, which meant we were doing a lot of work with Olympic athletes as they transitioned from sport to the professional working world. Had I not said yes, I would have never had the experience of a lifetime to go to the Olympics in Rio and have a VIP pass and meet the people I did. If I hadn't said yes to leading our military program, I wouldn't have had dinner in the private residence of former First Lady and President Bush last year. If I hadn't said yes to leading the Dress for Success partnership, I wouldn't be sitting on this couch with the two of you at your inaugural podcast. So say yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. And
what a great stories. Thank you, Rachelle, for
so,
sharing.
Joanie, I am not a big look in the rearview mirror person. I am very much looking out the front window. So I don't have any regrets. I just want to tell the audience that what someone told me is really the truth. Is it goes really, really fast. Life speeds up, and enjoy every moment. And I think you said be present and be in the moment and enjoy the moment, and everything's going to be okay, right? One of my best decisions was staying with Adecco Group, partnering with Dress for Success, and taking the risk on running the foundation. It has just been such a blessing. And like you and I have said, feels like a calling to really make a difference in this world. So thanks for having us on the podcast.
Oh my
It's been
gosh.
so fun.
Well, thank you both for being my first guest on my first More Than
honored.
the Dress.
Yes.
I am honored and thrilled to be here. And I hope our listeners have really enjoyed this. I know I have, just listening to both of you, your stories, your advice, and your guidance really resonates with me, and I know it'll make a difference in others' lives. And if you haven't checked out Cherry on Top, please do. You can get a copy on Amazon. It is such a great book, and as Joyce says, she gives the proceeds back to the American Staffing Association and Dress for Success. So thank you, Joyce,
Thank
for
you, Joanie.
that.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank everyone for joining us on this podcast. And please follow us and engage with us. We'd love to hear from you. In fact, let me know your superpower or your superhero. Would kind of be fun to hear. And would love to engage with you throughout social media. And tune in next time. We're going to have some fun podcasts coming up. So thanks again. And
Thank you, Joanie.
and thanks to our Dress for Success team that will get the word out.